Recording started.
Talk shoes. Talk shoes.
Recorded live.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you are listening to the VMware Communities Roundtable podcast. This is podcast number 525. My name is Eric Nelson, and with me today I have my co-host Matt Lungeth. Today is Wednesday, August. What is today? Today's August 26th, and this is the VMware podcast. If you want to watch us on YouTube, you can go to youtube.com/vbarbecue. Give us a like and a subscribe. And with that, I will say, Matt, how are you doing today?
Eric, I am well. Today's a good day. I found my mute and unmute buttons on Zoom, so better than most. How are you, sir? I know some things are a little concerning out there with all things in the Bay and the fires going on. So how are you doing?
Yeah.
How's the community out there? And can you see the color of the Bay today?
That's right. It has been fire season here, and we had those lightning strikes maybe 2-3 weeks ago. And normally they have these fire stations that, sit on top of the hills, which they man some of these guys, and any kind of single bolt of lightning, and that usually catch a fire. And we had that tropical storm come up, and I think they had like 3,000 bolts over the course of an evening. And it basically lit up like 1,000 fires across California. And so we have been burning, and we're talking burning. Some guys, like, if you know Alan Renouf and others, have lost their houses, right, or out of their houses, or their house burned down. So it's been pretty serious here. I guess California gets earthquakes and fires, right? Deal with. The Caribbean gets hurricanes. That's their fun thing, and mosquitoes. So I guess everybody gets some kind of thing they have to worry about year after year, and ours is certainly wildfires. And so we're in the thick of it. So that means that I haven't made it out to the Bay, but if I were to call it, I'd say it's yellow, orange, and brown, because you can't basically see anything. Literally 300 feet away, it's all just smoky. I feel like we're at a campsite, where you get the ashes at the bottom of the fire pit. Well, that's kind of where the Bay Area right now. It's just a lot of ashes on my back patio. So, yep, it's going to be fun, but that's the way it is. How's it going in your neck
color,
of the,
so to say?
Yeah. How's it going in your neck of the woods?
Just fine.
Oh, you got nothing going on. All right. With that, we're going to talk about what we're going to talk about today. So today's topic is Workstation 16 and Fusion 12, I believe, with Michael Roy. So Michael's been waiting patiently. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Howdy. Just living that dream.
What's your title these days?
It's product line marketing manager developer tools.
Nice. All right.
Basically, like the first half of the year, I act as a product manager, and the last half of the year, I act as a product marketing person.
Yeah, that's actually a good gig to have, right?
Keeps you on your toes. I'm a big fan. I get to be technical, but still get to tell a good story.
All right. Well, we're going to get to Workstation 16 and Fusion 12. These are new releases, so excited about that. Before we do that, we'll just do a drive-by of the key dates, and then say hello to Corey Romero, who is always doing some vExpert stuff. So first key date, September 12th through October 1st. That's VMworld. It's free. Go register. We're looking for registration. We're over the 50K mark. I think we're like 60K now. Go get your friends. It's free. Drive them there. Get us over 110,000 registrations, and you will get a warm and fuzzy hug from me, because we're always looking for the community to show up and be a part of it. There will be live places. I also have to shout out to some of the community members that are putting together a Discord server. We're going to have them on in the next week or two to talk about, Discord chats. They're going to take some of the VMworld streams and restream them, so that if you want to go over to Discord and hang out and watch VMworld, you can, and watch the live streams and chats. They'll have some chats rooms out there, and we'll get those guys on and bring them on to talk about what they're going to be doing, and we're helping them. We're sponsoring part of that, or at least supporting parts of that that are there. Corey's working with some of the vExperts. V Brownbank's going to be over there, so that should be good. Couple other shout outs. Spring 1, the 2nd and 3rd, go check that out. It also is free, so spring1.io. I feel like we should put a calendar out for your third monitor, right? Except for Mike Roy, who only has 2 monitors, because he can't do it. We're just talking about that. Anyway, Spring 1, 2nd, and 3rd, go check it out. It's free, and you'll learn a lot of cool stuff about Kubernetes and Tanzu, as well as other automation and obviously more coding thing for developers as well. We have Code Connect, October 1st and 2nd. That's right after VMworld. So basically, it is the week of VMworld, the 1st and 2nd. Go check that out. Code.vmware.com. Register. We've got 50 plus sessions. They're all live, unlike VMworld, which are pre-recorded. These are live coding sessions. We're doing it on GitHub. We're working with GitHub. All the coding sessions will have GitHub project directories where the presenters can upload their slides as well as code snippets. So it should be pretty cool. I wouldn't miss Code Connect this year. You can go register on code.vmware.com to let us know. It is also free. It is all live. We have GitHub and Slack and IBM and a couple other partners helping us do it. So it should be fun to come check that out. 50 plus sessions. Go do that. And then we will be running a hackathon. We're getting ready to announce that. If you've ever been to VMworld before, we run hackathons. We'll run a hackathon this year as part of the Code Connect event. Finally, last but not least, Corey Romero, what's up with the vExperts? Doing anything interesting?
Hey, Eric. Yeah, I just sent out some mail this morning. I was reached out by the comms team, and we're doing a blogger early access program called vExperts. And we do these a couple times a year. And kind of the purpose of these is to help the experts out with their blogs, right? And what I mean by that is we provide the content early before we do announcements to these vExperts under NDA. And we have a session. We show them, go through the slides, go through the updates, as well as a product demo. And so I just sent out email on that this morning. The blogger early access call will be September 10th. If you're a vExpert, go read the mail. If you're blogging on, vSphere or Tanzu, vSAN or VCF, and you've got blog articles that are semi-current, meaning in the last 12 months, go sign up for that. And the deadline for the sign up is Friday, August 28th at 9 a.m.
Awesome. And let me tell you, we do have some budget. So if you are a blogger and you are doing a great blog and you're working with Corey, we have some budget allocated to do influencer promotion. So we have maybe 10 or 15K to spend on increasing reach for VMworld content this year. So we're trying to target some of the VMworld content out into other audiences because VMworld is free this year and it's online. Why not let other people know about what we're doing and see if we can bring them along? So if you got something interesting, we might be able to see it and put some paid advertising on it so that we can expand the reach of what vExperts can normally touch. So that's another program we've spun up. Me and Matt are doing that. So get out there and look at what blogs you can write and let us know and we can help promote them. With that, we'll transition to Michael Roy. Michael, great to have you back on the show. You're one of my favorite of all time guests in the world. Just because if you're over on YouTube and you see his backdrop, he's got a pretty cool backdrop. You and Eric Hinder, are in the music theme, keyboards, guitars, drum sets. Pretty nice. How's it going?
I'm just living that dream, trying to stay breathing, like the same as you. It's not so bad. I'm just a little south of San Francisco, north of the Palo Alto area. And it's not so bad with the weather here. The air, we were actually able to get up and do a walk this morning and not have to wear N95 masks. And that was a blessing because it hasn't been like that the past few days. But we're in this like pocket where the fog sort of comes in and protects us a little bit. So it could be red north and south, but we're like orange.
Right.
But it was like, I think the number was actually 30,000 lightning strikes was that I read. And there was about 1,300 fires from it, but it's just incredible.
I believe that. I didn't know what the number was, so I made it big enough so that it would sound impressive, but yeah.
Yeah. I didn't realize that Alan was infected. That's heartbreaking. I hope.
Yeah, it's funny.
All right.
Alan Renouf, he's my Facebook friend. And so I see him and his kids swimming in the pool. And I've always been a little bit jealous of his like house in the mountains with, we're always jealous of everybody else's Facebook posts, of course. But he did a Facebook post of his house, which I'm very familiar with. And then the after, and I didn't even recognize the plot of land, right? Like just burned to nothing. It looked like a fire pit ashes. There was like one or two poles over in the back corner that you went, oh, that's where his pool, that was the fence to his pool. Like it just doesn't look, Yeah. So poor guy. I mean, we all,
2020, man.
yeah, it's like, that's what I was gonna say. I don't want to say anything on the podcast, but I want to go get a radiation suit next and have that in the closet because, hey, we've been through everything else. Apparently, Tony Foster on Talk Show says, we haven't gone through tornadoes yet. So, we still have other things.
Who's got that on their 2020 bingo card?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So the exciting thing, though, is that we're in launch season and trying to go through launches, and we got some launches. Why don't you tell us about what we've launched?
Oh, it's the most wonderful time of the year. So yeah, it's super honored to be here and to talk about what we've announced. Launch is coming up for us just ahead of VMworld. So in the press release, we were like, oh, Fusion 12, Workstation 16, Q3, it'll be out before VMworld. My session is the way that we're talking about it is this is out. Here we go. My session, by the way, is HCP 1833. If you were interested, we're going to be doing some good demos and talking a lot about all the features that we're bringing here. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because I figured out how to use OBS and all that other stuff. So it's going to be, I'm looking forward to all the demos that we're putting together.
Yeah. So are they letting you for your session use OBS as a mechanism to stream or?
Well, it has to be pre-recorded. So we have to adhere to whatever format that they're going to have. But I mean, OBS can output to whatever. And then if I need to do post, I can do post.
Are you going to do a Code Connect session? I can't remember if you're on the.
I'm also doing, I have a 30-minute Code Connect session. So we'll probably go through building containers, putting that container into a Kubernetes cluster, checking that out.
All using the Workstation Fusion kind of world now.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the big deal in the announcement. The press release was, VMware brings Kubernetes to the desktop hypervisor products. And yeah, so it's been a lot of work getting that done, but we really focused on, developer sort of productivity, and the way that we look at it, the lens that we look at it through is inner loop versus outer loop. And the inner loop is where a developer is going to work and they're going to iterate on code and they're going to sort of proof of concept. They're going to make that thing work. And they need to have an environment that looks like production to a various degree. So the nice thing about it with Fusion and Workstation is because we're leveraging code from vSphere, from ESX, all the hypervisors, the same hypervisor code, all the stuff that we put into Project Pacific, we basically took that and retooled it so that it would fit the desktop form factor. So there's a lot of this parity there as far as the platform supportability goes. So we can actually, we have a lot more fidelity, as we say. So the environment that you run on your desktop looks a lot like a Tanzu environment, looks a lot like a vSphere with Kubernetes environment, etc. So yeah, so right now we basically introduced this new tool. It's been in tech preview for a little while. We actually dropped it into the Fusion 11.5.5 and branch on the Mac side, and a tool called vCuddle, command line tool. VCTL, vControl, let the eternal debate begin. And, kubectl, 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 sort of in that vein. And it's basically a front end for Containerd. We took Containerd, which is the open source technology that powers Docker. If you install Docker and you look at how it runs, it creates a symlink between the Docker socket to the Containerd socket. And, so we did a similar thing, but the implementation of it is all ours. So when you call Containerd primitives, it deploys a very special lightweight type of virtual machine appliance that we custom built based off Project Pacific that has all the runtimes that we need, all open source. And so it puts each container in a tiny little VM, and that VM gets its own IP address. So instead of having when you launch Docker Desktop, it's like a 3 gig VM that takes the RAM away, reserves it, and you have to do all the port forwarding for everything. With vCuddle, you actually just fire up the container in an isolated kind of a pod, and that VM gets its own IP address. You don't need to expose a port. You can just hit the internal IP address, whatever port your service is running on, and it'll come up. But you can do the port forwarding, so -P, internal port, external port, and what that will do is that'll allow you to actually share the service on your network. So it's like a NAT, and you can create that NAT rule so someone can access the IP address of your host with the port, and it'll forward it into the container virtual machine appliance. So it's super handy. You don't need to have Docker installed. You just you can push, pull, build, and run containers. So for myself, I build microisoft.com. It's a Hugo thing. And then when I'm testing it, there's sort of 3 phases of the test. So there's the first test, which I'm using like the Hugo live thing itself with no containers, no nothing, and I'm making changes and it's happening in real time. And then when I'm happy, I go, vcuddle build. There's a Docker file inside the source bin, the source folder. It creates a Docker image, and then vcuddle run. Okay, that image looks like it's running as a container. Everything's fine. And then the final step is I'll fire up Kind or Minikube, and I'll put the container into there and say, okay, how does it run when I put it into Kubernetes? Because that's when I'm doing like a Helm deployment, for example. So it's a great way to sort of tie in the inner loop and the outer loop. So I mentioned the inner loop where you're doing that sort of code iteration, your development there. The outer loop is where like your Tanzu takes over, right? Where your vSphere takes over. So you push your thing into the source code, and then all that automation, all that magic happens. And when it's all said and done, you get that compatible
So
service.
I want to up level for some of the guys that might not, just so I can unpack this a little bit, just to say it again so that I make sure I understand. So the inner loop is, hey, I'm building my app. I want to play with some Kubernetes services or microservices. I'm building them, and then Fusion Workstation gives me a VM environment that allows me to run Kubernetes, and then tie my code that I'm writing to something that's running in the hypervisor, either on Workstation or on Fusion. So that way I'm just sitting with my desktop. I'm not connected anywhere else. I'm just on my desktop and I'm building things, and I can run them in a Kubernetes environment that is hosted by Fusion or Workstation directly. And that's what you say, the inner loop, right? Or the inner, what you call that?
Yep, the inner loop, exactly right.
Right. So I'm building. Now I want to start testing. I want to actually say, okay, I need to put this in production somewhere, or at least a test environment. Then there's that outer loop. And what you're saying is, well, first of all, I can expose my Kubernetes app on my local network to somebody else, right? That's on my local network. It gives it an IP, gives that inner loop piece that's running in the VM an IP, and exposes that on my local network locally, right? That's my unpacking of what you just said there. And then there's that final stage of, hey, I want to actually connect it to like a vCenter server running, what do we call?
VCF.
Yeah. Where I want to run Kubernetes in Tanzu, right? Which is running on a vSphere. That is the final step, and you have some logic that allows you to do that as well.
Well, it's not so much that we had to build in logic for that. I mean, like Fusion and Workstation can connect to vSphere, and you can get sort of a inventory view. We haven't gotten to the point where we've put like the workload oriented UI in there. So really, it's just about having the fidelity of the platform. So you have Kubernetes in the cloud, you have Kubernetes on your desktop. The Kubernetes is the same, right? Like Kubernetes behaves the same way. So that's really where the line is. So it's more like you build it, and once you've created that image, you push that image to Harbor, right, as an example. And then when Kubernetes, vSphere, Tanzu detects that, hey, there's a new image over here, depending on its pull policy, it'll go ahead and trash the existing one and deploy. Well, it'll deploy the new one and then trash the existing one.
Yeah, so I guess I should say just deploy up my image then, right? And it's it'll take it and run.
Yeah, so you can either like build the image directly and push it into Harbor, or you like what would more typically happen in an enterprise environment is you would just check all your stuff into the source code, whether it's GitLab or GitHub Enterprise or GitHub in general,
right?
And then that gets picked up and auto build and everything else. But yeah, GitHub Enterprise is a cool way to do it. Actually, I don't know if you know this, but GitHub Enterprise, most of their deployments are on vSphere.
So Michael, in that particular instance, so when I think of Fusion and Workstation, I'm thinking more of traditional applications of a one-to-one VM instance. So now we have multiple containers in our potential deployment. So what handles IPAM in that particular situation? The initial config file that deploys the cluster, or how is that handled? Or is that done through more of the GUI, or both? Or
well, the way that vCuddle sort of brings up, so there's two paths to deploying Kubernetes on the desktop. One of them is with Kind, Kubernetes and Docker, and that's the innovation that we sort of just did. And the other one is with Minikube, and we have we built and we support a Docker machine driver for that. So that way, Minikube, you can go like Docker, Minikube start VM driver equals VMware, boom, away it goes. And that'll do something very similar. It's not as tight an integration as vCuddle because the way that we sort of built it all in, but Kind is sort of a different workflow. So Kind is all about folks who actually build Kubernetes itself. What the cool thing about Kind, Kubernetes and Docker is that you don't sort of persist a cluster, you create it every time you need one, right? And so that was sort of the workflow that we wanted to start with. I think we're going to, as we evolve, we want to make it more accessible, make it more easier for all kinds of developers. And we do have, like I said, many kube works today, and you can certainly use Kind to load up images and test how they're going to work in a real Kubernetes environment. But it's really more about just having that local experience, and that local experience is going to be different when you're talking about the deployment. But the Kubernetes is the Kubernetes, right? It's turtles all the way down, as we like to say. So as long as you speak turtle, you're cool, basically. So yeah, So the workflow for Fusion and Workstation is you go vcuddle kind. And what that basically does is it creates an alias. So I mentioned earlier that like Docker aliases to containerd. Well, when you go vcuddle kind, it creates that alias to our containerd endpoint. And that containerd socket is, speaks containerd, speaks Docker. And then right after that, we just do vcuddle or kind create cluster. And then because it looks for the Docker socket, communicates the same way. We actually didn't change kind at all. So when you run the command the first time, it'll check to see if you have it downloaded. And if you don't, it'll go ahead and download the latest version and we'll make it work. So it's a little different. So you don't need like an IPAM, and you can then sort of employ that stuff if you want to have more customization options. Kind has a lot of really cool ways of not only having, custom images and roles and things like that, but also just like custom nodes. Right? Like maybe you're a service provider or you're a technology integrator and you need to, tweak Kubernetes itself. This is how folks do it. So like, for example, I help with the Kubernetes, the SIG contribx, so the contributor working group. And just getting started and getting folks to be able to build on Kubernetes is a hard thing. So we hope at the very least, this should make it easy for folks to, if you're not on a full native Linux system, to do it in a way that feels native, feels Linuxy, and you're not sort of like, okay, I'm just booting into a VM and then just doing everything in Linux anyway. It's that sort of context which can be tricky.
Sure. What other feature sets are out there? So we have the Docker integration and all these new feature sets as it relates to containers, but what other things are we seeing in these new 12 and 16 releases?
Yeah, so like we're not, we are very much, working on satisfying sort of developer workflows right now, but we absolutely haven't given up on everything else. And that's, related to not only the features that we're doing, but also the pricing changes that we've put into place this year. So, from a feature perspective, I mean, the two big ones that stand out for me are DX11, like so DirectX 11, 3D accelerated graphics in virtual machines on Workstation and Fusion. We've had it out in tech preview. It's been working pretty good. We've taken feedback and made improvements to the stack there, and there'll be some better performance and things like that once we ship. But for context, I've been playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 on my MacBook for a few days, like the demo that just came out the other day, and I'm loving it. It's so much fun. It works
now,
great.
Is there a hardware limitation that would go back to as far as the age of the Mac that you want to try to run DirectX 11 on?
Yeah, you need metal. And the other part is, Fusion actually won't run on a lot of older things. Like generally we support like N-2 versions, but Big Sur and Catalina introduced some really big changes. So we actually deprecated support for 10.14 in Fusion 12. So you require Catalina or Big Sur in order to run. Basically, like you need full Metal 2.0 support. And without it, the APIs just aren't there for us to do that type of translation, the DirectX to Metal on the host. But the other cool thing on the Mac side is because we're in that supportability, that means we also support eGPUs, right? So Apple created some APIs for external graphics. And so, I've been playing the Tony Hawk I have a Radeon 5700 eGPU, and it just flies. Like even the screenshot I took of that's, been gotten around of the 3D Mark demo that we did. It was like 140 frames a second or something. Like on a physical computer, it's like 500 or 600 frames a second if you have like a 1080 or above or whatever. But the fact that you're still getting more than like 60 frames solid, consistent out of a virtual machine running DX11 while I was running two other virtual machines at the same time, I think is just a really good testament to the great work that the engineering team and the graphics department do. They're phenomenal. These guys and gals are awesome.
Sounds like a phenomenal improvement.
Yeah. I wasn't even sure that the Tony Hawk thing came out. I knew it was coming around, but one of the fellows on the community, the beta site, was like, "Hey, I've been trying to play this and it works. Just wanted to say thanks." I was like, "What? This is out?" Quickly install it, get it running, and yeah, we were playing that. We were playing Elder Scrolls Oblivion. I've been testing Overwatch. A bunch of stuff. It all just kind of works. Some of it doesn't. Definitely, some of it doesn't. Like I was hoping to get the new Star Wars to work. Wasn't playing.
Is this running out of Windows? It's gonna be the stack. So you got a Mac, then you have Windows 10 running, or then you're playing the game on top of that. So
yep, exactly. Windows 10,
Mac, Fusion, Windows 10 running. Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think it supports Windows 8 or Vista. I think it's just 10. Yeah. We did drop support for Windows 7 hosts in this with Workstation, so you can't install it on Windows 7.
Why would anybody want to stay on Windows 8 anyway? I don't know. That's either 7 or 10. So yeah, I've upgraded everything to 10 in my world now. So that's good. Good. So you got that, which is fun because it's all Fusion. Workstation. How popular is Workstation? Are these guys? Is this still a very popular thing that people are using?
Yeah, it's more popular than Fusion is by far. There are more users on Workstation than it's like, I don't want to get into the numbers, but it is growing and it's huge. And it's one of those things where sometimes you think, it's just Workstation, we're not worried about this feature. It's like, no, you need to make sure that we have a story and that feature is taken care of, because there's, a million users who are going to care about that and tell us when it doesn't work right.
What's the big use case still? Is it still just test and dev, right? Like where you have that?
Yeah, test and dev. We're also seeing emerging for like learning, right? Like as a student, having Workstation Player, it's available for free. You can run VMs and learn about operating systems and things like that. A lot of folks in the security space use it. Kali Linux runs pretty good on it. We're working to add support for that. It's, there's bureaucracy and stuff like that to make something like that happen. But to the Kali team out there, I'm trying real hard. We've been trying to get it for a couple of years because you have to do some tweaks to make it work. But for penetration testing, forensics, red team stuff, there's a big use case there. Certainly a lot more in the, I need a secure contained environment. So like folks who are doing work from home, for example, right now, you can grab Player and download the corporate virtual machine and VPN into corporate backend, and there you go. I do a lot of work like that. There are just some things that, as much as Mac can do, there are things on Windows that I need. So I have a corporate VM that I can fire up, and it, it's VPN back home and doesn't really see much going on in the host. And, it's a great way to keep things secure while still being productive.
Does VMware give us a corporate, VM that I can just spin up that I can then not taint my entire machine with their giant security protocol, but yet they see me as running the giant thing that they require me to run?
Yeah, totally. Yes, there is. It's not as like click, download, go. There's like an ISO and it's got like a boot process, and then it signs you into the domain, and then a bunch of stuff happens dynamically, but it totally works.
Yeah, that's a great use case, because I know a couple buddies of mine have been complaining. They don't work at VMware, they work at other places. But nonetheless, as soon as you take your Windows box and hand it over to IT because you need to work from home and work on this guy, it's like CPU goes poof.
Your machine gets polluted.
Yeah. Like some companies I know, we talked about this before recording, I'm not going to mention names, like they actually pay extra internet bandwidth for their employees because they do so much security communication back and forth that, and so that's fine. I get what they're doing it. But then if I want to have my machine back to myself, right, like Workstation would allow, just put everything on Workstation, away you go. Right?
And it's nice too, because you can take Workstation Pro and you can like lock down a bunch of stuff. You can disable drag and drop, you can encrypt the VM, and then you give it to someone with Player and they just run it. They can't tweak any of those settings. They need a password to open it. The VM files are all encrypted. It's a great way to keep working home isolated.
Yeah, isolated. And it's isolation for the user as well as the corporate entity. It's good for both. It's a win-win.
Everybody wins.
Yeah.
So Michael, to that end, we've heard a couple of different terminologies here, and I know in this next version, the naming conventions are starting to change. So Fusion Standard is going away?
Yeah. So Fusion Standard goes away. And we think our users are going to love this, because what we've introduced is Fusion Player. And Fusion Player has the same licensing that Workstation Player does, which means two things that are really important. One, there is a personal use license. You will be able to download Workstation or Fusion Player, and it has a built-in trial key. So you have to there's a process we're putting out to request a key, personal use key, and then that gets registered into your My VMware account. So it's like you own that key, and even though it's a $0 key, and then yeah, you fully unlock the version of the product. There's no feature differences between or feature like deprecations, things we took away specifically in Fusion Player versus Fusion Standard. So you get snapshots and all the other features that were there. We didn't limit the CPU. You can full on, it's like 32 CPUs or something like that. I think we support now. 10 terabyte disks and 256 gigs of RAM, I want to say. But yeah, so no nerfing there. And then the other part that's interesting is the licenses are actually transferable. So with Workstation Pro, we would say, hey, you can use this device or this license key for up to 3 personal devices. Now what we're saying is you can use your Workstation or Fusion key for up to 3 personal devices, so long as, and those devices can be Mac, Windows, or Linux. So you can take your Fusion Pro key, you can install it on Workstation Pro for Mac, or sorry, for Windows, and then install it on Workstation Pro for Linux. 1 key, 3 devices. Happy. And the same thing with Player, so you can have that Workstation Player commercial license, and then if you get a Workstation Pro or and you want to switch over to Workstation Player, or sorry, Fusion Player, I'm getting myself all confused here. You can just take that key and bring it over and commercially license the Fusion Player. So yeah.
So if I had a Fusion Player license, why would I want to step up to, or what do I gain by going to Fusion Pro?
Yeah. So 2 things. One, to be able to use it in a commercial setting. So Fusion Player is for personal use only. If you're using it to make money or in support of anything, you need a commercial license for either Player or Pro. So Pro inherently has that. The other things are clones. So Workstation and Fusion Pro can both do clones, as well as like full clones, link clones. There's the virtual network editor. So, being able to create all your VM nets, modify them, set your DHCP, set your NAT scope, whatever. And also that includes like packet loss simulation, latency simulation, bandwidth limitations. So you can say, make this feel like a 100 megabit connection or a 5 megabit connection, right? Test your app resiliency. And then connection to vSphere. So, being able to connect to a remote vSphere environment, whether that's to vCenter server or to an ESXi host. Those are the main 3 differentiators. So it's, it's all about that sort of pro use who need, I need to create a lot of VMs. Clones are a super handy way of, taking one VM and, making a bunch of copies of it that are going to be different. In my case, for example, I have, a base image of Big Sur, and then I created a linked clone for, Big Sur beta 5, like beta 4, then beta 5, and I'll make another one for beta 6. And, when that comes out. So it's a great way just to iterate and maintain that separation of versioning and things like that. But
are instant clones supported, or is it only linked at this point?
It's linked, yeah. So not instant clones yet. It's something we're looking at. We know a guy who knows a guy.
Maybe a little VM fork from here or there from out of the source.
Yeah, well, that's the nice thing about, inheriting sort of the vSphere and ESX code base, right, with Fusion and Workstation.
Absolutely.
It's a re-implementation of those same APIs, right? So when they add features there, it's just a matter of like, what do we need to do differently for them to fit the form factor of the desktop? Sometimes it's UI, sometimes there's defaults, sometimes there's platform things that need to be there, like CPU features that don't exist in the desktop, so we can't expose certain things, right?
So while we're talking about vSphere integrations, VMC on AWS that's running on Azure or any other cloud provider, are there connections? Does that just work?
As long as you can connect to the vCenter server, it'll work. I haven't done a ton of testing, but it's from like personally, but it's a part of our testing suite. We do have accounts. William Lamb, I know we work on it a bunch here and there, just to make sure that things work, and both in terms of like connecting to it, but also deploying it nested. That's another thing I should mention too. So like with the tech previews right now, if you have Big Sur, nested's not supported, but that's going to be, we're fixing that for GA. So we'll be able to deploy ESX VMs on Big Sur. And the reason why this I even mention it is because like Big Sur going forward has this whole different architecture. They don't allow us to use kernel extensions in the same way that we did before, and we really need kernel extensions to run. That's just how it's just how this stuff has to work. And so Apple has, over the past bunch of years, created APIs, and they're finally at a point where we're like, okay, we're ready to take advantage of those APIs. And at the same time, Apple's also putting down the hammer and saying you don't really have a choice. So not only are they've taken our feedback to make sure that those APIs are up to our quality standard, but at the same time, it's a lot of future proof going forward, so that we support this new platform.
What OS is Big Sur? I don't even know the version number of that.
11.0.
11.0. Okay. Yeah, how long has it been out?
It hasn't been. It's in tech preview. They launched the beta in June, around June 15th, which just so happens to be around the day of our technology guarantee program, which, for the record, is like if you bought Fusion 11 from June 15th until the day of launch, you're going to get Fusion 12 commercial license, for just in your My VMware for you. So if you brought Pro, you'll get Pro, and if you brought Fusion Standard, you'll get a commercial license for Fusion Player, so you can use that for work.
So in the chat, somebody asked the obvious question: what does licensing cost?
Yeah. So where did I have my license thing over here? So I'll start off with the bad news. Fusion Pro new licenses went up a little bit, but we did this so that we could align it with Workstation. Right. So we brought Workstation down from 250 to 200, upgrades from 150 to 100, and that's the same for Workstation Pro and Fusion Pro. So Fusion Pro upgrades were $120, now they're 100. And like I said, that license is portable between Workstation and Fusion Pro.
Okay, so Fusion Pro 100 upgrade. That's what I want.
Yeah, if you have Fusion 11 or Fusion 10 to go to Fusion 12 Pro, it's $99.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and if you have Fusion Standard and you're coming to Fusion 12, if you're using it for personal use, of course, license is free. Otherwise, it's the same pricing as Player, and we didn't change the pricing there. So it's 150 for a new license and 80 for an upgrade.
Right, that makes sense because I tend to upgrade this stuff every 2 years. Right, I don't go every year, but every 2 years, it's like $50. That's reasonable. That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, and if you're using it for corporate purposes, I mean, I would hope that pays for itself, in a day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right. Okay, so that was Fusion. I got that $100, right, for the Pro upgrade, which is what most of you guys should be on. You should just be on the Pro, and you should be spending your $50 every couple of years, right? And then if you come to VMworld, Michael Roy gives away these cards. Like he just must have like a giant stack in his back pocket. He's like, you get a card, you get a card, you get a card. So definitely come to VMworld, spend the $2,000. Not this year, but in future years. If you're hanging out, you can get those cards, those Fusion cards. Workstation, what was the pricing there?
Same deal. So that was the big change this year. Basically, we brought Pro and Pro aligned, Player and Player aligned. So it's 200 and 100 for Pro, 150 and 80 for Player.
You just lost me. So Workstation out the door, don't have a license, is going to be 200 or 150?
200. Workstation Pro.
Okay, Workstation Pro. Got it. And then the upgrade is still 100?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Good. And then what's the price of Fusion Pro? No upgrade.
200. So again,
so Fusion Pro went up $50. So then we aligned the 200. We brought Workstation down from 250 to 200. So you got a 200 for the license and $99 for both of them. Same pricing, same deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Reasonable. Yeah. So
There's a great infographic that I'm sure that Michael's team put together out there on blogs.vmware.com/Team Fusion with all of the new pricing.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah, it's the biggest call generator I get myself from community members is, hey, what's the deal with Fusion? Can I get a free license? And I'm like, it's and then I never know what to say. It's like, it's $99. Just don't bother me for $99 because I don't. And Corey Romero does not need to be bothered for $99. And what the issue also is that the VMUG Advantage program and the vExpert program, we don't give away licenses to the Fusion and Workstation products.
Not true. No, totally not true. I literally just did a VMUG Advantage presentation yesterday. We've been giving him the 1-year licenses as part of the VMUG Advantage for three or 4 years now.
Oh, there you go. Right.
Yeah,
You probably
it's a
give it-
great way to. The program's awesome. That program covers the cost of Fusion and Workstation in and of itself, and it's totally worth it.
Yeah. I think it's only like $200 for the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. And plus you get all the other cool stuff. I mean, they have all this
that's
training
much-
stuff, all these, like that was yesterday we did a career development series. So I was talking about how VI admins can sort of grow their career in this cloud world, and like, what's an SRE and how does that relate to like me as a VI admin, and what do I got to learn to like go forward in that direction?
Right. Yeah, that's right. So, and now I have good answers for that question all year long. 200, 100, or go get a VMUG Advantage. And then I also say, or you can go vExpert away and then you get it for free, right? Like, because we do that, but you save your $200 VMUG. But if you don't want to do vExpert, just go get a VMUG Advantage, and you get a ton of licenses, including.
And just so it's pithy, and I've got it said in like one shot. So like Workstation Pro, Fusion Pro, 200 new license, 100 upgrade license.
Yeah.
Fusion Player, Workstation Player, commercial use, free for personal use, commercial use, 150 for new, 80 for upgrade.
Ah, there you go. Nice.
Before the reason why we did this is before there used to be 4 prices,
Right.
Upgrade like 4 different like upgrades and new prices for everything, and it was confusing. And these products do the same thing, so.
Right. And then everybody, yeah, it's good. It's reasonable if you're a home guy. Yeah.
Or gal.
I did. Yeah. That's a guy generically. They.
I'm just giving you a hard time, man.
I know. Home lab, if I want to use Kubernetes, getting back to Kubernetes because we're running out of time, right? But that's the big feature thing. I'm just trying to envision if I do build my home lab, I guess I put vSphere on that, then I get Workstation or Fusion, and I do that connection. So then I can test the in loop and then the out loop, whatever the loops you called.
Yeah, the inner loop and the outer loop, exactly. I wouldn't really like use like Workstation to deploy the Kubernetes that's going to be in your home lab. You would want like Tanzu, VCF, and your own sort of way of doing that. But then once it's up, then exactly. Or you could do it nested. A lot of folks will do that. I mean, I do it. I have my iMac Pro here, and I've got 3 vSphere ESX hosts and a vCenter server, and you need to have enough RAM and system to be able to do it. But PCs, RAM's cheap nowadays.
Right. But let's assume you go get a Nook or something, and you build your vSphere lab, and you got vSphere 7 up, and you hopefully have enough money that you can actually get Kubernetes environments set up, because you need like a terabyte or some huge amount of memory. I don't know what it actually is, but it's a lot.
Yeah, it's all NSX's fault.
Yeah, I believe that. Then you get that up, and you're certified on that. You do your VCPs, and then if you want to talk to developers about how to engage and how to do dev, Workstation Fusion, you go use that, and you learn that bridge. You learn how to do that, so that when you're going and doing presentations to your DevOps people and your developers on how we support our VMware stack with Kubernetes and Tanzu, you've kind of learned that model, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the relationship between the two, and we're going to see this getting a lot tighter as we evolve, right? Like we've got a lot of great new minds coming in that have come in from all the various acquisitions, and plus we've been marching towards this whole vSphere with Kubernetes thing for a little while. And what's interesting is we're on the same team, right, from the product management perspective. So we're the vSphere with Kubernetes and like Fusion and Workstation, literally like one level up is the same people. So we get that direct visibility, line of sight, and we get to innovate where they're innovating too.
Yeah, that's interesting, because VCF, VMware Cloud Foundation, when we were talking strategy for VMware Code, the code community, I was talking to some executives and the branding executives, and they were like, you really just need to go talk when we're talking about how to build a strategy for the VMware Code people with regard to cloud native apps and modern apps and all that. They really the executives pointed to go just talk to the vSphere guys, right? They're the ones that are setting that strategy, or that strategy is all coming together, right? Because it is sitting on top of vSphere, and VMware Cloud Foundation, all those components actually, create this solution. So they're like, let vSphere people drive that strategy, right? And
and it's interesting on that note too, because while before all of this stuff was totally possible. You could deploy vSphere or Kubernetes on vSphere like all day long. You just have to do it, quote, the hard way. And for the record, I absolutely recommend everybody does that. If you're a Kubernetes person, that you go through installing Kubernetes the hard way once in your life. Kelsey Hightower maintains a GitHub thing with instructions on how to do it all the hard way. The first time he ever demoed Kubernetes in San Francisco was actually using Fusion. Interestingly enough, we talked about it one time. But yeah, going through it during the hard way gives you there's not a lot of components. There's 4 or 5 different components and they have to be stitched together a little bit. And it's time intensive. You got to go through and do it, but you will never get a better understanding of how that all works. So where vSphere comes in and adds the value is okay, now that you understand how all that works, here's the button just to deploy it, right? Take your cluster, right click, congratulations, it's now a Kubernetes cluster. And now here's your kubectl endpoint, plug into it, deploy, pipeline endpoint, bam, bam, bam. And that's really, I think, where the value that the vSphere team brings is. It's not so much about being able to do it. It's about, you don't need to know all the innards of Kubernetes in order to support your developers using it.
Right. And in a real sense, that's what we've gotten really good at, is building, the easy button to say, hey, I can then go work at these higher levels, right?
Well, we're a platform, right? And the cool thing about Kubernetes is Joe Beta talks about this. He's like, Kubernetes is a platform of platforms. So we have our sort of virtual infrastructure platform. And then on top of that, you have this application-centric platform. And then on top of that is, Ruby this and Java that and whatever app platforms from there, right?
Right. So Matt, I'll give you access to a little bit more of Michael before we go, because we're running out of time here.
Yeah, as we're getting here to the top of the hour, obviously VMworld coming up here at the end of September. As Michael had mentioned, his session, HCP 1833. Michael, for our listeners, are you out there on the interwebs as far as Twitter or anything like that? Would you mind sharing your handle?
Oh, yeah. Mike Roy Soft. On everything, literally everything. Mostly. So you can find me on Twitter. That's where I live. But yeah, if you in any forum that you've got Discord or anything else, if you search Mike Roy Soft, you'll probably find me.
Is that
okay?
How do you spell Mike?
MikeRoySoft.
Perfect. Good. All right.
And Eric, back to you as we hit the top of the hour. I don't know if we have time for the barbecue report and to wrap things up.
I talked to Tony Foster. He did not do any kind of barbecue. He took a weekend off, and I don't want to tell a tasteless bad joke, but being in the Bay Area right now and talking barbecue is probably not the thing to be doing, because it is too smoky outside to even be outside, at least in the South Bay. I guess if you're up with Michael in San Francisco, you get a little bit of a break here, but down here, it's like I walked outside for 2 minutes and just went, yeah, go back inside, because you breathe in, it's like smoking 5 cigarettes at once. So yeah, no
barbecue is the friends we make along the way.
Yeah, exactly. And if you really want to enjoy barbecue, just go outside and breathe in, because I think there were lots of wild animals that got caught up in the fires. So you're probably getting enough of that just on your own. So
and there's the tasteless joke.
Don't go there. I tell the joke anyway. But with that, no barbecue. Now the air quality is really bad. No cooking. No outside. No anything. Stay inside. This is our penance. We don't get tornadoes, as Tony Foster said. We get our own natural disasters. And if you happen to know somebody that was displaced, reach out and ask them if you can do anything with them, because I'm sure they're going to go through a lot of tough times as they have to try to rebuild. So with that, we're at the end of the show. Thank you, Michael Roy, for being here. Thanks to Julia Klaus for doing all the nice video work that just happens seamlessly. Matt, as always, and of course, we're excited about VMworld. Go register for code. With that, we'll see you again next week. I think we have people from vRealize Automation showing up, and a couple other launches that are going to be happening between now and VMworld. So stay tuned.